All right, good friends. As promised, here she is, our great friend, Helen Beniski, also known as Helen of desTroy, where you can read her great writings at her blog, helenofdestroy.com, also over at RT. And Helen, I got a question, but first, welcome back to INN.
Hey there, good to be here.
So her nom de plume or her nom de guerre or both. I don't know, Helen of desTroy. What do you consider Helen of desTroy, your nom de plume or your nom de guerre?
Well, it's nom de plume that's turning into nom de guerre. I mean, now that speech is considered a hanging offense, basically, and more, it's thought crime is becoming a reality. So, but I guess we'll talk about that as.
Well, let's go right into it. Let's go right into it. There's big news as we speak. Thought crime, the ridiculous attempt at censoring people under ridiculous circumstances. Tell us about the latest that happened today in that regard.
Well, it just happened. In fact, I just wrote about it for RT. Hopefully the article will be going up soon. But Facebook has banned, well, of course, Alex Jones, who I think was already banned, but they've also banned Laura Loomer, Louis Farrakhan, Milo Yiannopoulos, a bunch of these people who are eager punching bags of the media. And of course, the reaction is always, the reaction from the left, honestly, is insulting and it's embarrassing because I still consider myself part of the left, actually. But this reaction of cheering on the censorship and in some cases even saying that it doesn't go far enough. I mean, this is positively disgusting. These people that call themselves journalists that are cheering on censorship. I mean, it's time to just put down your laptop and shoot yourself because this is absurd. But they're banning them under this rubric of these are dangerous organizations, and we have a policy about dangerous types, and it's like dangerous. If you disagree with their ideas, then argue with them. I mean, if you think that their ideas are so beyond the pale, you should be able to argue with them. And if you can't have a debate with Alex Jones, then I'm sorry, your problem is not Alex Jones. Your problem is you. Your ideas are not very good.
Well, but they're being honest. These people are dangerous because the oligarchy has arranged a situation where you've got these multi-millionaires like Rachel Madcow who spew, in many cases, outright lies or, half-truths or omission. And typically money would hold sway under those circumstances. But now that the alternative media is there and people like Alex Jones have such a platform, that puts the lying and the propagandization in danger. So they are speaking the truth. Just because something represents a danger doesn't, the truth to a lie is a danger.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically it is all about the competition. I mean, they don't like, if they can't win on the merit of their own ideas or the merit of their own quality of their programs, then they will just legislate it. And that's what you do if you're in a position of power and you're losing an argument. You just make it illegal to argue. Well, it's bullying. It's straight up bullying.
But before that, if you can't win the argument, then you lie about it. And if you have enough money, you pay pompous experts to bloviate about it to the point where people who are not pompous experts or experts at all, but trust in the institution of the Fourth Estate, okay? And if it's done with enough polish and money and 3D graphics and dun 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 dun, dun that kind of stuff, it has this air of authority. So that's the first step if you can't get people to slit their own throats for themselves.
Yeah, of course. And even that, though, I mean, their ratings are in the toilet. I think there was a headline just the other day about CNN's ratings are way, way, way down compared to this time last year. I mean, no matter how much money they throw at the problem, and they are heavily subsidized by, the defense industry, which is basically the taxpayer subsidizing these overlords here. And they're so heavily subsidized, but they still can't hold our attention because the quality of what the stuff they're putting out is just so – people have – even the ones who are not experts instinctively know that there's something going on here, that they're being lied to. I mean, people just – they have a tendency to be able to sniff out BS, even if they don't really know why they're doing it. They just instinctively – it's like a dog. If a dog that bites a burglar but doesn't bite your friend, the dog knows the burglar means ill. They might not be processing it on a conscious level, but they know that they're there to rip you off. And people just, I mean, not to compare people to dogs, because I think people are in general
all men are dogs. All men are dogs. I mean, let's be clear, all men are dogs.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not really that insulting, because dogs are smarter than a lot of people I know. But it's in general, there is an instinctive sort of dislike of people who are just selling you a bill of goods. And I think that the people, the ruling class, doesn't believe that Americans have that capability, but we do, in fact. And it's a good thing, because otherwise we'd be even more screwed than we are, and it's hard to imagine what that would look like.
Well, but I'm a bit of a historian sometimes, and I've been around a little bit longer than you, so I remember, you can see how this developed. Okay, remember the HBO had a series called Rome a while back, and there was this guy who stood in the square and he made the announcement of all the, who won the war this week, and what does Pompey is returning from Egypt and all blah blah blah. And that was like the news of the day. Of course, that guy couldn't say anything, the town caller, that would be upsetting to the overlords of the town. And then you just keep going. Then you had the printing press, you had oration. People used to have to orate. There was no microphones. There were no speakers. So they had to project their voice out into a room or a theater or something like that. So you had this very straight way of talking, like that, to enunciate. And then that came into radio and vaudeville. It went from vaudeville in the theater into electronics. And then if you listen to early days of radio, these people talk so stiff and everything else, and they enunciate because they're used to speaking to a crowd. But that was invested with a lot of authority, that manner of speaking, the radio. Oh, my gosh, this is expensive technology. These people have to be telling us the truth, And so it was automatically imbued with a whole bunch of authority. Then it went into television and everything else. And now it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
And the oligarchy is addicted to the way it used to be, but there's alternative media now. That's your problem, I think, one of them.
Yeah, that's why they're trying so hard to put the genie back in the bottle as far as alternative media is concerned, because you can just have, you might not be able to afford a big fancy studio or whatever, but because people don't necessarily even like the big fancy studio. More and more people are just like, they're fine with just a brick wall. It's just the quality of the information is what saves the day, and that's why they have to squelch it so hard. The fact that Facebook is now they're not even just banning Alex Jones, by the way. They're banning people who share Alex Jones, which, it's interesting, because I don't think that Alex Jones' content is necessarily even that subversive to the ruling class anymore. Maybe it used to be 10 years ago, but the stuff he's putting out now is pretty harmless. It's just like, cheerleading Trump, and yes, we need to go into Venezuela, and yes, we need to go into Iran, and all this like stupid stuff, which is basically the same thing the mainstream is pushing. So it's like, it's just, I guess, because of the few holdouts that he does have, there are some positions he holds that are still relatively in line with the truth, and just those few positions and his huge audience is they find deeply threatening.
Well, I think there's plenty that Alex Jones has talked about in the past and still does talk about.
In the past, yes.
And still does talk about. 9/11 and that sort of thing.
He doesn't talk about that anymore, though. He's completely off the 9/11 thing.
Well,
he thinks that the Saudis did it, and they did it alone with no help from any other country in that region, that he no longer refuses to say anything about.
That's fine. I can't speak to that because I'm not up on it. But in any case, I have to think that, he does have a big audience, and you have to understand also, he may not be as threatening to the powers that be, but he's got enough to cause cognitive dissonance to the sheeple that still haven't awoken yet. And
certainly, and like I said, it's the size of the audience that they find the most threatening, because he's got them beat like the many times over. The amount that like a CNN has to spend per viewer compared to their audience is just like through the roof. Compared to what Alex Jones is getting, or even some of the less popular ones. Not really up to date on who are the most popular ones, but a lot of like just YouTubers are getting audiences equal to or greater than CNN with a very minimal layout of resources.
Expenditure. Hold on, we're going on break, but yeah, it's not fair. Our money doesn't buy us power anymore. Okay, we'll be right back with Helen Beniski. We're just getting warmed up. We'll be back with Helen of desTroy.com right after this. All right, the great Aretha Franklin, rock steady. We have another very powerful American female voice, and who knows, someday maybe as famous as the great Aretha Franklin. She's got my vote. Helen of desTroy is her pen name or her nom de guerre war name, Helen of desTroy.com. We're talking about Helen Beniski. We're talking with Helen Beniski. So Helen, Facebook, first they try to pay for propaganda that screws everybody up. When that doesn't work anymore, then they go for censorship that exposes that they're paying for propaganda that's screwing everybody up. I guess that's where we must be by now, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically ruling out any sort of argument because they know they're going to lose. And it's gotten to the point where their arguments are so stale and so just repulsive that they can't even pay people to hold these views anymore. So it has to be just, oh, well, you want to hold that side of the argument? Well, we're going to make sure you can't. And you can't even share the opinions of anybody who would. That's what gets me is the banning the people who share the wrong thinkers. It's like you can't even comment on it. And I think I saw a clip from somebody who was trying to upload a video where they were discussing the Alex Jones ban, and the Facebook had actually blocked them from even uploading a video where they were talking about the ban because it used a clip of Alex Jones. So it's like, I mean, that's really, it does protect too much, I think, is the situation here.
Well, and, there's so much we can derive from this as well. They've got more money than God. God borrows money from them, okay? They crank it out. They create it from nothing. They can pay everybody off, and it's not working. I mean, this is like, oh my goodness, the truth is mightier than the sword, you know what I mean? And when you get to the point where you can't buy it and you can't pay it off anymore, it's like, what do we do now? It's and that's where they should have a sign at the bottom of the screen whenever one of these talking heads is yammering about how many millions of dollars they're making a year from you and me, by the way, right?
Yeah, they should wear those jackets like the race car drivers do with the name of all their sponsors on them. Yeah. And then it's just like, okay, well, we know what we're dealing with here at least. I mean, it's bought and paid for by defense industry, etc.
I let's just say I hypothetically drive a Ford. I just bought myself a Ford a couple of years ago. You drive a Ford off the lot and the value of it goes down by $4,000, $5,000 as soon as you drive it off the lot instantly. Well, how could that happen? You don't even have any miles on it yet. Well, because that was the money over and above that goes to all the marketing and the advertising. It's like I'm forced to pay for this crap. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
I don't have a choice. And if you take the forced money out of it, how long could it last? And you mentioned before, we're also forced to pay for it when Lockheed Martin or, a defense contractor is paying for, Meet the Press on Sunday mornings or something like that. That comes out of our tax dollars too. It's like,
yeah, and it's like a typical commercial. Okay, well, it might be a product that you can buy or something, but no, in these cases, it's like here's a stealth bomber. It's like who in the audience is going to reach into their pocket, get out their credit card, and call up and order a stealth bomber? It's like, oh, that looks pretty good. I think I'll take one of those. No, so it's either that or the pharmaceutical industry, which is a whole other can of worms. Which is, I guess, those are the products you take to make it easier to swallow the other products that they sell you.
Yeah. Or the headache that you get when you realize you've been lied to. But still, I hate it. I don't watch it, but I have to pay for it. Okay. Every time and it's like necessities. Every time I buy a tank of gas, you know what I mean? I'm paying for some major league ball player's salary that I may not even ever have seen before, or some stupid talking head or Rachel Mad Cow or whatever, and it's really something. It's now in this day and age, they don't need that. You want to buy a widget, you go to the widget channel on the internet, or the 10 widget channels or the 50 widget, and you get all the widgets on Earth all lined up, all compared, all.
No, you go to Amazon and they cut out all of the small businesses that might be producing better widgets, but which are producing wrong thinking widgets, and they remove the widgets, the offending widgets from Amazon, and you can only buy a certain pre-approved set of widgets.
Right, the Walmart of the internet, but which Walmart did the same thing. But still, you don't even have to do that. You could really have, if you really make a widget and it's a real widget and it's safe and everything else, you could get on the widget. In other words, what I'm trying to say is there's a way to do marketing today without all of this extra money built in that pays for all. And that's why these TV. Do you have a favorite show or shows? Do you watch Game of Thrones or Game of Thorns, as I call it, or any of that? Do you have a couple of favorite shows that you must watch?
I mean, I tried to watch Game of Thrones when it first came out. I think it's a really nice looking show.
Try to watch what?
I tried to watch Game of Thrones when it first came out. I think it's a really nice looking show, but then like it's one thing. The plot is either extremely predictable or they go and kill off all the good characters. So it's like, I don't know. I made it through the first 2 seasons, and then it was just like I can't deal with this anymore. I don't know. There aren't any shows on right now that I'm really particularly into, but I did like House of Cards before they decided to unperson what's his name, Kevin Spacey. Which I guess, I mean, that's what happens.
Well, I have long since, once in a while, some kind of a series on HBO or Showtime will come on that catches my attention for a while. But and then network television is even worse. I was in a bar the other night. You've been to my little clamming village here. There's a Andy Shore bar. It looks like your grandmother's rec room basement. You know what I mean? We go in there sometimes, and he's got the TV on, and it's just some kind of NBC crime show, predictable junk garbage, with all of these people like, raising their eyebrows, I think that could be bad news. And it's just so predictable, all this garbage. But still, that stuff is paid for by you and me when we buy products, whether we want to pay for it or watch it or not. It's baked in. What if that money was returned to the general population who could then spend it on other things and stimulate the economy that way? And there was, the widget channel. You want to buy soap suds? You could look at all the soap suds you want.
Well, see, if in the mind of our politicians, though, the economy is already stimulated enough because they got their tax cuts, they got their everything. I mean, the homelessness might be at record levels and everybody doesn't have enough to make ends meet, but the people running the show, their wallets are plenty fat, their stocks are doing fine. And so in the mind of our government, our economy is fine, doesn't need any fixing. Imagine that.
Well, I don't know. Trump ran on fixing it. Trump ran on getting people back to work.
Yes, and he declares that he has fixed it. And homelessness is literally at a record high in many cities in this country. I don't consider that fixed.
We've been through this. I think it's not really homelessness. I think a lot of it has to do with mental illness and drug addiction, and they're masquerading it as they have to call it homelessness because otherwise they have to admit that more people are checking out, killing themselves, zoning out than ever before. I thought this was such a great system. Why is everybody rejecting it? Therefore,
that's exactly it. I mean, it's the same thing with the unemployment numbers. I mean, they try to say unemployment is so low. It's like, no, unemployment is more like 20% if you look at all the people who are like working 3 hours a week or whatever. So this whole idea that the economy is just peachy and that there's nothing wrong with our current system is ludicrous. And
I don't know. I think that Trump said, I'm going to try to help and fix the economy. I don't think he said I'm done. I don't think he said I'm done by any means. I think manufacturing jobs are coming back. I think putting tariffs on Chinese goods are a great way to get jobs going again. Tariffs was the way this country paid for the government before the income tax. All right. It was all done that way, and what does it do? Tariffs are a tool to help even out the playing field. If you're dealing with a third world country where people get paid, a tenth of what they get paid over here, well, then you put a tariff on the goods coming in to raise it so that's an even playing field. And he's not done. He's not done by any means, but I think he's made more progress. Obama said he's
also spending more money on the military than even at the height of the Iraq War. We're like record military spending here, which is, that's so much for ending the wars.
He hasn't really started any new ones, and that's a record.
He's about to start one in Venezuela.
Well, all right. He's trying, but where's he going to go with that? Come on, they tried before in Venezuela, and now you got Russia and China there. Look, I think when you go back to H.W. Bush through Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State, that's 16 years. To go, what are we, 2 1/4 years now with Donald Trump? To go for 2 1/4 years without a new war, that's, I think, a record.
No, that is definitely that's something to – it's sad that the bar has sunk so low, but it is indeed something.
He ran on saying, I don't want to start these stupid wars anymore. So, if I have a choice between a Barack Obama or a Hillary Clinton or a W. Bush who's going to maybe not spend quite as much on the military as Trump, but they're going to be starting a new war every 2 years, versus a guy who's spending more than they are but isn't doing the new wars. It's a no-brainer for me. Spend. I'd rather you spend it than use it, you know?
Yeah, maybe that's the deal. Maybe he has to pay off the arms companies in order to get them off his back regarding the new wars.
I think you ought to explore that. You ought to turn your great talents into that direction and take a look. Even when everyone complains about what he does with Israel, I don't like a lot of what he does with Israel, but I think a certain amount of that, there's such inertia and bureaucratic power. If you don't want to get the JFK treatment, you got to at least throw these people a bone once in a while, no?
Yes, there's a difference between throwing them the bone and throwing them the whole carcass. I mean, it's there's definitely this difference there.
Well, throwing them the whole carcass would be if he took the bait on the fake chemical weapons attack and really did a no-fly zone in Syria and stuff. I don't see him giving them the whole carcass is giving them the wars that they so desperately want, and one of the reasons why they want to get rid of them is so they can go back to that. But anyway, we got about 20 seconds. Helen, I'd love to keep talking about censorship and all. And what other topics are on your radar in 16 seconds?
Well, I mean, this law that's been passed in Florida to outlaw criticism of Israel, basically. I mean, that's more censorship, but that's a big problem, and it's coming to the rest of the country very soon, I think.
All right, we'll talk about that with Helen when we get back. Tom Kiely, INN, right back in. All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiely, INN, World Report Radio, Tuesday and Thursday nights here on the Logos Radio Network. I always say the great Logos Radio Network. I got to mix it up once in a while so you know that it's a real person talking to you rather than a tape loop or something. And that chuckle in the background, well, of course, that's our great guest. And that one I don't have to change up because it just happened to be true. Helen Beniski, also known as Helen of desTroy, where she writes a great blog, helenofdestroy.com. She also writes articles for RT and a very knowledgeable, great researcher, and rather entertaining as well, both in not only the way she speaks, as you can hear tonight, but also in the way she writes. So then, Helen, hour number 2 is getting underway here. We ended the last hour talking about these laws. You know, they're in Europe, and now they're coming to the United States where, you know, this BDS stuff is getting under the skin of the Zionists. They don't like it. And it's causing them to, you know, try to fight it everywhere they can. And now it's starting to cause some crazy stuff with speech. A. B, it's at the same time, the Circular Firing Squad is getting its first female members, of the American Islamic community in, and they're talking straight about Palestine and all. This is a crazy time for the Zionists, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with this law in Florida is that, so they've criminalized quote-unquote anti-Semitism, and they've changed the definition of anti-Semitism to include basically criticism of Israel. I mean, they try to say holding it to a different standard than other countries, but it's not that. It's been used already in other countries to basically silence all criticism of Israel. And the thing is that but the mere existence of the law is enough to break the law, because the part of the law is you can't supposedly there's something about it's an anti-Semitic trope to say that Jews have any sort of power in government. And it's like, okay, so then if this law is being passed and there's no chance that even a Jewish lobbying group like, say, AIPAC has any power in government, how is this law being passed? How does it have bipartisan support? It's just that it's this like sort of rubbing it in people's faces. And I feel like it's definitely backfiring, because American support for Israel is actually declining, especially on the left. In the Democratic
among
Party.
the young people, right?
Yeah, because it's just, I mean, you're coming into this thing as a politically unaware person, and you're looking at the situation, and it just basically looks like a country is beating up on another people who, not even letting them have a country. And I always compare it to like the little scrawny, nasty kid on the playground kicking sand in another kid's face, and then when the other kid goes to hit back, they come in and they bring in their dad, who's a bodybuilder with an AK-47, and that's America. Basically, it's anybody who tries to fight back against Israel abusing them is then treated to the business end of the American firearm. And it's completely unfair. And I think that young people can see this better than older people can, because they're just getting it. This is the first they've seen of it. It's not like they don't have generations of narrative of, oh, these poor victimized Israelis. Oh, they're so persecuted. Oh, it's like, yeah, they just happen to like own most of Congress. I mean, when you look at the voting record on these things, there was one person in Florida who voted against this bill to ban quote unquote anti-Semitism. And now, don't get me wrong, I am completely against anti-Semitism, actual anti-Semitism.
No
I'm
question.
not. Yeah, and it's just the idea that the definition can now suddenly be changed after it's outlawed. No, so you can't just have a law that just says no criticism of Israel, because that it just doesn't even pass the smell test, let alone the First Amendment. I mean, Texas, the judge just struck down a law against boycott, divestment, and sanctions because it was unconstitutional. So how are you repealing these laws in Texas and passing them in Florida? These people really need to just stop, because it's embarrassing and it's overreach, and it's going to backfire in their face, I think.
Well, good friends, Helen and I communicate numerous times a day, either directly or indirectly. We are both members of an email salon where we share information and our writings with each other and so forth. And Helen, you've seen me promote the concept of what I call the circular firing squad for some time now, right? And I'm very gratified to see it's being picked up by people in the media now.
Yeah, I mean, the image is perfect. The circular firing squad, it is very much so. I mean, and it's also like they used to have, I think, the confession sessions they used to have in some of these communist governments. I think Mao had the where they go up and they confess their transgressions against the philosophy and stuff. But there's a word for it, and I don't remember what the exact word is.
Yes, I remember.
Confession sessions or sin sessions or something like that. And they replicated it in some of these American cults that later had like Synanon and stuff like that. Just like, I want to say confession sessions, but that's not it, because that sounds
I know,
weird.
and you're right. There is a term, and I have to try to remember what it is. But the way I'm using the term is that to gain political power, you assault some of the basis of your opponent or the majority which you wish to bring down. So you find fault with them that are either human faults that everybody has, or faults that you blow out of proportion, or more commonly, faults that have nothing to do with today's population, okay? You know, that has to do with people who lived several hundred years ago, and you start promoting that. So you've got these young people convinced that America is this horrible racist place that, you know, had slaves and everything else, and there was a time when that was true, okay? And a lot of, you know, a quarter of a million American men died during the Civil War to change that. You know what I mean? You know, quarter of a million died to try to keep it in place too. But
yeah, and it's just the use of these terms to silence debate, and it's always being offended on somebody else's behalf. Like, you notice the people who are pulling the trigger in the circular firing squad are almost universally white people, and so it's like they're not being offended on their own behalf. And when you ask any of these minorities, just one-on-one, like, say, does this thing offend you? And chances are they will say no. I mean, I obviously can't speak for everybody, and I'm not going to make the mistake that these other social justice warriors do of pretending to speak for minorities when I'm not one. But I can at least speak as being a woman. All the things they say, oh, you can't say this because it's misogynistic. Well, I don't take offense at any of these things. And if you are taking offense at some of these things, I would argue that one needs to grow a thicker skin, because these things are not offensive. And you're letting somebody have real estate in your head when that is really, I mean, you're giving them the power that you claim you don't want them to have over you. So why are you doing that?
You're buying into your own victimization that they're selling.
Yeah, crowdsourcing your own oppression, basically. It's really unnecessary. So why do it?
Well, a couple of things about that. First of all, I think it might have been on Fox News. I never dreamed I would ever watch Fox News, but I can't. I try. I go back to MSNBC, and if I can last a minute, it's a pretty big deal, you know, over there. And, you know, Fox, a lot of their stuff is junk too, but they are mainlining the pure dope on this Russia hoax thing since day one. and a lot of stories are breaking over there. However, okay, one of the things I saw, I believe it was on Fox, they send a man on the street or a woman on the street to a college campus. Okay, now apparently it's gotten so ridiculous that you've got now blacks only groups on college. They need a safe space, supposedly, where they can talk about it. So they interview all these white kids. What do you think about this idea of, blacks only groups on campus? Well, yeah, man, yeah, sure. Like, they were oppressed for a long time, man, and if they need blacks only groups, I support it, man. It's cool, and kid after kid after kid. Then they go to black Americans on and off campus. And they say, what do you think about, this new idea of getting blacks only political groups or social groups on campus? And they go, what?
Yeah,
we just got rid of that.
Segregation is not it's completely pointless. And this whole, I wrote an editorial for RT for this about this the other day, that just even the media, they pay so much lip service to diversity as being this shining holy grail of we must do everything for diversity. But when it comes to diversity of thought, they run screaming in the other direction and will not permit it. A report from FAIR, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, just came out that said that of all of the articles published by Washington Post, New York Times, and the major TV shows in the last 3 months, not one was against regime change in Venezuela or in support of Maduro. And I'm not just supporting Maduro, but against regime change. Not one. And that's that's groupthink right there. So they might talk about diversity all they want, but there's no diversity there. And they can put as many different colors and genders and sexual orientations as they want on the television or in the newspaper, but there's no real diversity there, and it's absurd to even think so. So that sort of ties in with the college thing, because you try holding these different opinions on a college campus, and they'll scream and accuse you of hate speech and deplatform you. They try to get Camille Paglia fired at her university.
I see that.
Where she's been nuts. For how many decades? And it's Camille Paglia is the ne plus ultra of free speech, awesome, artist, feminist, she's amazing. And you're trying to get rid of her because you're offended by what she says. Well, then don't listen to her.
Because you can't deal with her truth. You can't deal with her voice. So in this situation here, where you've got all of this craziness going on, the back to what I was saying before, you're teaching these kids how vile it is to oppress people en masse based on their race, based on their ethnicity, their religion, and how that we have to tear down statues and everything else. And then comes Operation Cast Lead, or Operation what is it, Defensive Shield or whatever,
Protective Edge.
Yeah, it's where you're just dropping phosphorus on Palestinians in their own land because they don't like the idea that you're taking it from them. This is the circular firing squad. This is where it has an internal inconsistency. This is how you get to the truth. You find if there's any internal inconsistencies. And the kids, at least to their credit, are waking up at least that much. And they're saying, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. And then to try to cover that hole makes them look even worse.
Yeah, and then it's and then they have these fake college groups coming in that are funded by the Israeli government to protest these Students for Justice in Palestine and these other groups that are protesting Israeli apartheid. And so they have these the Israeli government actually pays people to go in and protest and say, oh yeah, you're a hate group, and BDS is a hate movement. And have you seen the Al Jazeera documentary, The Lobby, that's basically documents this whole thing? It's should have been front page news for months, because it basically exposes how U.S. taxpayer dollars are going to Israel to earmarked to combat the BDS movement, which they consider enemy soldiers. Basically, they think that they're enemy soldiers, and they basically called for targeted civil assassinations of them. And that money is then going back.
At least targeted civil assassinations.
Till targeted civil assassinations, it just doesn't get much. You can't go much beyond that.
No, actual assassinations.
Yeah, assassination is pretty final, but especially
hold on. The clock is assassinating this segment as we speak. We'll be right back with Helen Badinsky. Oh, great, beautiful music. I like it anyway. And to go along with great, beautiful guests, that's what we do here on INN. Helen Beniski, go take a look at her blog, helenofdestroy.com. Just right there. I mean, how clever is that? Okay. You know, Helen of Troy, Helen of Destroy. That's going back to Homer. I mean, what's there not to like there? You know, and then Helen lives up to her pen name when you start reading her material. And she also writes for RT. And she's also a guest on our show and a friend. So, Helen, we only have 3 more segments left, and there's so much more to cover. We'll go back to the abuse of the anti-Semitism trope the next time you come on, because there's so much other stuff going on. The circular firing squad is coming into full view now with the Democratic Party's everybody with a pulse jumping into the presidential election because they all think they're going to be able to beat Donald Trump. And the latest now is Joe, he died 10 years ago, Biden.
Yeah, he does have that whole sort of just dug up look, although, I mean, not as bad as some. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that we have these political dynasties, basically. And so it's like, well, we know you guys liked Obama, right? So here's a relic of the Obama era. Here's Obama's what's the opposite of a straight man? His like a joke kind of is his foil.
His foil. His straight man. Exactly. That's what you call it. Well, yes and no. I mean, he gave Obama the gravitas that Obama needed because Obama was a come-from-nowhere person without a past, okay? So it's like, Are we really going to give somebody the keys to the country like that? Well, don't worry. Uncle Joe will be over his shoulder.
Yeah, he's the babysitter.
He's been around forever, He knows how Washington works, And, so they have a conundrum. They want to get another one of these come-from-nowhere guys like Beto O'Rourke or somebody, or now Buttigieg or somebody like that. And the Democratic establishment is feeling the echo of 1972. Okay, 1972, we had a similar moment in the Democratic Party. It was against the war, it was protest, and against the Democratic establishment, they nominated George McGovern, okay, who was about as far left as you could get and still be in the Democratic Party at that time in government. And Nixon mopped the floor with him. Okay. And that's what we're looking at again. You got the arch conservative Nixon, the so-called conservative Trump, the major liberal movement in the country and the Democratic side of things. They got their way. They got George McGovern. And I think he only won 2 states. And
he lost very badly, but it's like, I mean, Biden, I wouldn't say is a far left figure of anything. Biden is
no, and that's why they've thrown Biden into the breach, because most of the other ones are their George McGovern of today, and the Democratic establishment is trying to prevent a repeat of what happened in '72. They're going to win on points and get a really radical ultra leftist to run, and then they're going to get trounced. And the Democratic establishment knows that. That's why they pushed Biden in.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I feel like it's almost as if Trump is in some way involved in this. Like he's got some sort of connection in the Democratic Party, because Biden. I mean, the whole smelling the hair thing and the groping thing. It's like he's so toxic to everything the Democrats, the voters in the Democrats supposedly stand for. I don't understand how this can possibly be considered a good idea if there is anybody awake at the wheel. I mean, unless it's just so completely like. This is a deliberate. I have to think that this is like a deliberate strategy to lose, because there's no way you just can't.
Well, that's Donald Trump, the Svengali with the Vulcan mind meld, who can control the Democrats into putting up. Donald Trump just needs to get back out of the way and let the circular firing squad work its magic. But see,
my theory was that if they were going to let everybody. Do the circular firing squad thing, take out all 20 whatever of the candidates, and then in comes Hillary Clinton and mops up afterwards.
That could still happen, but I think she's going to really go to jail if the truth about what happened during 2016 is allowed to come out.
Why would that be allowed to come out?
I said if it's allowed to come out.
Yeah,
so,
not gonna happen.
but we'll see. We'll see who's gonna. It's either Donald Trump is going to be assassinated, or Hillary Clinton's going to go to jail, or it's going to be a brokered deal again, like Iran-Contra, and you throw a few low-lying people to the wolves. But in any case, back to this whole thing here, the adults in the Democratic Party know that a Karma Sutra Harris or Cory Spartacus my ass Booker is going to go down in flames. Okay, and Buttigieg, and
well, he's
Beto.
Just so like I think that somebody on our list actually commented that he's just like Macron, and he is just like Macron. I mean, he's just completely a nobody, come from nowhere. Looks kind of nice and smiley, but he represents nothing, and he's neoliberal, corporate friendly. He's a bland little puff of nothing.
Well, I've been making that point because they have to go with nobodies because all the established people have screwed the middle class over for the last 30, 40 years. So they don't have a record. So they have to get people with no record. That was Obama. Okay. That was Macron. That's Ocasio-Cortez. That's practically Beto O'Rourke, although he served in Congress allegedly for a little while. And Buttigieg. I know. So the point is that the adults in the Democratic Party know that the far left is going to be a disaster, and the people on the far left don't care that he's a dirty old man because he's one of us. And that is another way that it exposes the lie here. But then you have another problem is that people, like I was saying before with Israel, people have this instinctive reaction to hypocrisy. They can't. I mean, the voters. I mean, not the politicians themselves. They love them some hypocrisy, but the voters themselves they're not going to go for this after they've just been hammered like nonstop about this Me Too stuff. You're talking about a quarter of the people in the country, which is half of the Democrats. The other half of the Democrats, they don't have any ethics at all anymore. They don't care about it being hypocritical. How do you explain that the governor of Virginia with his blackface hasn't been run out of town on a rail yet?
True.
If Trump did that, if they came up with Lindsey Graham back in college, are you kidding me? All right, and then so all right, let's get rid of him. All right, yeah, let's get rid of him. Who's the next guy? Oh, the next guy did it too. Uh-oh. All right, well, who's the third guy? Oh yeah, that's a black guy. Okay, let's get him. That's even better. Wait a minute. 2-3 women are saying that he raped them. Oh, if these were Republicans, are you kidding me? So they have a huge. And I have liberal, quote-unquote, friends. They don't care that this is a coup going on in the country. Good. We don't like Trump. I said, you fool. It's going to happen against you next if you like this so much. You know?
Yeah,
anyway.
That's exactly the point because it's the same thing with this Facebook, the censorship. I mean, you think they're going to stop at just one? No. Once they have this tool in their toolbox, it's open season on everybody.
Well, I got to get technology back on the show. I had this guy named Campion on the show. I think he was the WikiLeaks supporter that died funny in Norway recently. I had him on a while back. He worked with Annie Machon. You know who Annie Machon is?
Doesn't sound familiar.
She worked for MI6 or MI5 rather in England, like their FBI. She's great. We've had her in New York on INN before. I got to get her back on the show. She was good friends with him. But she quit the British FBI when she saw how Israel framed some Palestinian kids with a bomb that went off, and they actually went to prison, and MI5 knew the truth about it. But anyway, I got to get technologists back on the show because I'm hoping this is going to bring down all the social media and the Facebooks, and we're going to get our own neural networks that allow us to talk about whatever we want to talk about.
Oh no neural networks, please. I don't want anything anywhere near my brain. Sorry, that's not.
Well, I meant figuratively, but I would like to see real freedom, where you know what, we can all come. Come to this channel and put your videos up. They're not going to be censored, like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, hold on, because we're out of time in this segment. We got 2 more segments left to go with our friend Helen Beniski, Helen of desTroy.com. Right back after this. All right, good friends, welcome back. It's INN World Report Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. My name's Tom Kiely. I'm the lucky person who gets to bring this program to you on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Now, and I think in our 9th year, we're going on 10 years pretty soon. We'll have to have a party or something. And why? Because, well, over the years, we've spoken with many very, very interesting people like our guest tonight, Helen Beniski, who puts out the great blog helenofdesTroy.com. And it's always a pleasure to be conversing with good writers, good journalists, good researchers. It's even more of a pleasure when it's kind of a little bit intergenerational, if the truth be known, which I could say is sort of what's going on here, but that's fine. So in any case, let's get right back to it. Helen, we got about 2 more segments left. About 2 more segments left. I would like to get your take on this. The Mueller report is out, and there's an adult back in charge at the Justice Department. All right. I want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that there was nobody in control at the Justice Department when it came to this thing. Okay. The guy that Trump first picked, he was allowed to be he talked himself into being recused. Jeff Sessions. All right. He didn't have to be recused at all. The law says if there's a criminal investigation going on and you were involved in the campaign, yes, you would have to recuse yourself. That is not what was going on, and what has been going on. It was a counterintelligence investigation. Is Trump really working with the Russians against the United States? There is no law that says you have to recuse yourself for that, but he was talked into it by the crooks. By the bad
Jeff Sessions also was never exactly on the side of all that is good and true in the world. Jeff Sessions was brought on because he was the basically like the only guy who was willing to throw his support behind Trump early on.
Well, I also think that people had a respect for his view of the Constitution and so forth. He's been known as a straight shooter. People don't always agree with him politically, but in any case, I think maybe they got pictures of Jeff Sessions. You know the old expression with a dead girl or a live boy. You know what I mean? Something because he was feckless. He was ineffective, at least when it came to this. And what happened? Trump bided his time. He waited until after the 2018 election, and then he got rid of him. All right. And where it wouldn't have been an issue in the 2018 election, and they hired this guy Barr, and now it's like, we got an adult back in charge here. Sessions Miller ends his report within less than 2 months. All right, excuse me, I had to see. This report would be going on still if Sessions was in.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Because Barr is not recused. Barr can say, okay, show me what you got. All right. You've been working on this for 2 years now. Show me what you got. I'm in charge here. Sessions couldn't do that. The moment there's somebody who didn't have to recuse himself, who's a straight shooter and says, show me what you got, it's over. Are you kidding me? You've been pushing this thing for 2 years now, and this is all you got? It's over. It's done. Okay. And that's what happened. And now so Barr.
Yeah, and the sheer amount of denial that's going on with the mainstream media with just refusing to admit that it's over. I mean,
well, not only that, they're refusing to admit that just like they lied to us about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, just like they lied to us about how invincible Hillary Clinton was and what an oaf and unelectable person Donald Trump was. Now they have to explain how they lied to us about there's a there, and there's evidence and Schiff, Adam Schiff. Well, I've seen it. We've got these, and here we go all over again. You alluded earlier that the CNN and Rachel Maddow and their ratings went over a cliff when the Mueller report came out with no indictments and no collusion. They went off a cliff. So that they're having.
Well, it's like if they had sold their coverage as fiction. They sold their coverage. If they had sold their coverage as fiction, they would have had great ratings because it made a great spy story. It made a great espionage thriller. But people don't appreciate being just lied to for years at a time about something that just simply doesn't exist. And so I think people are justifiably angry. I mean, it takes a lot to completely get somebody to change their TV viewing habits, but I think that they shot themselves in the foot with that one. They could have not went there, but they couldn't resist the ratings, basically.
So And
by the ratings,
the,
die by the ratings.
The ratings to who, though, right? You know, the diehards, you can tell them anything, but apparently there was enough independently minded people who gave up when the truth came out on them. So let me ask you the following then. You know, I just cannot believe that these people are adults that were selling this garbage. So how many of the people in the news media are so stupid that they just know Donald Trump was colluding with the Russians when he wasn't? And how many of them know it's a lot of baloney, but they're getting paid the big bucks to do it, so they got to keep a straight face while they're doing it? What do you think the proportion is among them?
That's a good question, because like when you just say something, even if you don't necessarily believe it, when you start saying it, there's this whole fake it till you make it thing that like the same neurons fire as would fire if you actually did believe it. So eventually you do come to believe it. And just the sheer amount of times, like especially Rachel Maddow, just doing it every single show for however many years, like I have a feeling she believes it by now. And that's really scary, because she's supposed to be a very well-educated, like intelligent person. And if she's basically lied herself into believing this nonsense, then it really doesn't say much for the integrity of the human mind. I mean, I think that some of the other ones are more likely to just be just spouting the lines that they're given to read on any particular day. But she seems either she's a very good actress or she really believes this stuff. Because you remember when she was spouting that nonsense about how Russia is going to come in and shut down our heating systems because it's really cold and make us all die. And like you don't. I mean, that's not just somebody reading lines. That's somebody who genuinely believes the bullshit. I mean, the stuff they're spouting. And it's like, I think that some of them are just selling a bill of goods, but I think that some of them have genuinely bought into the cult, and it's going to be very, very difficult to deprogram them. I wouldn't be surprised if you see like little, because it has become a cult, and like a cult, the more that proof against the cult's doctrine gets thrown at it, the more tightly the cult clings to its beliefs.
Entrenched.
Yeah, so like I think you're gonna end up seeing like little Russiagate communes break off, and like people go off to live in the woods or something, and just like plot rebellion against the Russians, who have now infiltrated every level of government. Because the only reason the report didn't find anything is because Mueller was compromised, right? And Barr is compromised. No, we need to impeach Barr. And the whole Congress is compromised. I mean, they say that they're against the Russians, but they're not really against the Russians. I mean, it's easy to see how this sort of thing snowballs. These people really believe that we're still in the Cold War and that the Russia is our enemy.
So if I may synopsize, if there is such a word, if I may distill, it sounds like what you're saying is people like Rachel Maddow have so convinced themselves that they believe that the lie is the truth, and therefore they're so well equipped to present it night after night with a straight face and without any doubt. I submit to you, have you ever considered the following? That may be precisely why she gets paid the big bucks, because they did a profile on her and they know she's capable of that, and she can sell a lie. Really, it's like MK Ultra. If you don't know the truth and you believe in alternative reality, you're never going to spill the beans. Okay? Did you ever think of that? She's getting paid the big bucks because that's who she is.
I mean, she could just be a really good actress, but I mean, it just seems like if that was the case, like but you can get paid more in acting roles if you go into Hollywood or something. But maybe she didn't discover her talents until she went on air for MSNBC. I mean, it's entirely possible. But if she is acting, then she deserves some sort of prize, but not the journalistic prize, an Oscar or an Emmy or something.
Well, we'll talk about that. Pulitzers were handed out for this garbage too, this Russiagate nonsense too.
That's true.
But we're going off the air for this last segment coming up next. But I'll just tell you that I just think that she is a zealot. She's a fanatic, and she believes this stuff. And that's where it all comes from with her. And that she has a whole worldview that depends on it, and it's all coming apart. We'll be right back. All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Kiely. Final segment of tonight's show. Helen Beniski, our guest. Helen of desTroy.com. Go to her blog. She writes for RT as well. Do you write with a byline for RT over there, Helen?
I get a couple bylines every week. Like I do some op-ed stuff, but most of it is just it's just like voice of RT kind of thing.
So a lot of what you're writing over there is people wouldn't even know unless they could detect your style or something.
Well, I mean, they could look on my website, and
There you go.
I post a list of stories that I write every week.
Go to Helen's website, helenadestroy.com. You'll get her own writings, and there's stuff there that doesn't make it onto RT as well, right?
Yeah. There's plenty of stuff that doesn't make it onto RT. I publish on Global Research. I publish on publish some stuff on Veterans Today. But mostly Global Research is where a lot of it ends up. But I also have a medium.com blog, which is, I mean, it's a good like alternate platform to have because sometimes my site gets attacked. I mean, that's unfortunately if you're doing good work, your site tends to get attacked. But
well, you're getting close to the target when you start taking on some flack. So anyway, let's finish up this. The Mueller report comes out and it's a big dud. Okay, the Mueller report comes out when it comes out because there's finally somebody running the Trump Justice Department who is not recused. They tried to get him to recuse himself because he likes Trump, because he wrote an op-ed one time in favor of Trump's point of view on something. You know, we can't exist. Our fantasy, our reality shift cannot exist with an adult in the room. If there's a real attorney general who can say to Mueller, show me what you got, it's all going to be over.
Well, that was the weird thing, though, because like some people on the other side were condemning him for being friends with Mueller. So it's like, which is it? You going to disqualify him for being too friendly with Mueller or being too friendly with Trump?
Yeah, and I think there still might be a there as well. I think Mueller is the go-to guy, case after case after case where the deep state needed a cleanup, man. It's been Robert Mueller.
Well, yeah, that's what he did back when he was a prosecutor at Boston. I mean, cleaning up after Whitey Bulger. I don't think that those skills they don't dissipate over time. I think you just get more and more corrupt. Sure, but yeah, and then the whole thing he pulled with the anthrax. I mean, he's not not an honest person for sure.
But a loyal trooper who will, use the full power of the FBI to grind the truth to powder. He bit off a little more than he could chew this time. But he gave it the old college try. He took 2 years trying. And did you see the latest now? So they don't get him on Russia collusion. It never existed. Trump knows it never existed because he was there. He would have known. Okay. So now they're trying to get him on this obstruction of justice. And that's only because most people don't understand the law. Okay. He could fire Mueller whenever he wanted. He could fire Sessions whenever he wanted. He did fire Sessions. Okay. Now,
yeah, I mean, the fact that he took so long to do so, I think.
I think he just did not want to give him the political ammo before the 2018 election. And he did it right after the 2018 election. Oh, I would have been pissed. Can you imagine if you're an executive like that and you hire a right-hand man that is not going to – or a woman who's not going to be working with you and working against you?
You got like dead weight there, and the one guy you've relied on to do all your things is no. But, I mean, he had unfortunately, he did have that cloud hanging over him for the entirety of his first term almost, and it's –
You mean the Russiagate stuff?
Yeah.
Well, that was by design. That's like that's the least we can do is to hobble this administration by that. And you said something else before, which I thought, needs to be circled back to. I don't know if you watched this happen, but the leak of the DNC emails, okay, that was a leak from an insider.
Yeah.
Okay. That was okay. They couldn't allow that truth to get out there. In fact, it looks like that insider may have been murdered. Okay. So that's when the Russian hacking story came, which built a basis for this Russia collusion story. Okay. I don't know if you noticed it, but early on, it was alleged, it looks like, supposedly, the DNC says they were hacked. The FBI says it was by the Russians. An intelligence services say 17 intelligence services say. And then when you look at it, it's like, well, we really kind of feel like we think it,
Yeah, there was nobody would actually put it into exact words, and I saw this happen on Wikipedia too.
Right.
And I don't want to cut you off in the middle, but it unfolded in this exact way. Like people arguing over, well, all these sources say alleged, we have to say alleged too. And Wikipedia, the editors who are really in charge of things, I mean, supposedly it's all egalitarian, but that's total not the case. But people just saying, oh, well, sources say alleged, so we have to say alleged. Oh no, well, we all know. I mean, nobody in their right mind actually thinks that the Russians didn't hack the election, and they pushed to get rid of the alleged, and then they got rid of the alleged, and then gradually the journalistic sources in response get rid of the alleged, and it's just this whole back.
And now today it's a fact, and it's not just a fact on MSNBC; it's a fact on Fox too. It's just a fact. The Russians hacked our election.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The Russians hacked the DNC emails, and we've talked about this before. BuzzFeed ran with the story and pointed a finger at who the Russian hacker was or whose server farm it was by information they were given by the DNC. And then that Russian sued them, and now they're going back to the DNC for the proof, and the DNC won't give them the proof. And that story should be front page news. I don't know why that's not front page.
Yeah, there's the idea that they couldn't provide their server. I mean, like that should be the big neon red flag right there. Yet people think, oh no, they just provided an image of the server. That's totally normal. That's not totally normal, actually. I mean, that's not how forensic investigations work.
Right. Well, no, they could provide the server, but they refused to do so. Yeah,
well, I'm sure that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had it taken out back and shot.
Well, speaking of her, why is she still walking around? I mean, and then the Awan brothers, there's so much stuff that, when the corruption gets so deep, this is just,
that's the reason why I don't trust Trump is that what happened to lock her up? What happened to, why are these people still walking around?
Well, I don't know. Let's watch. I mean, the QAnon people and all.
The QAnon people are BS. There is no anything to QAnon. Sorry.
Well, there's the QAnon and there's the QAnon people. However, regardless, I don't put much stock in them. I let them entertain me from time to time. But it could be that Trump let them have their best shot. If Trump started coming out with, well, first of all, the other thing, I think you need to consider the establishment is not going to speak truthfully about the depth of the corruption and the bad cops until it knows it has to, okay? And now it knows it has to. Mueller didn't work. Did you see Hitler when he found out the Mueller report?
Yes.
That is so sweet. Okay, so, now there's no place left to hide. And what you're seeing, I hear the latest that you're seeing now that I'm hearing is that the rats are starting to rat on each other now. Oh, yeah? You think I'm going down for this? Well, what about when you did that? Now they're finding out there was multiple spies placed inside the Trump campaign by the FBI.
Oh, yeah. The Papadopoulos guy is talking about this, that they sent multiple ones to try to intrude through him. And it's that's three separate FBI attempts, and it's at this point it basically becomes entrapment, because it's the same thing they try to pull with these disaffected Muslim lone wolves in the U.S. in various places. They'll have an FBI informant approach them on a message board and say, "Hey, I heard you like jihad," and the guy's like, "Yeah, jihad's cool," and the guy's like, "Hey, well, I got some bombs," and the guy's like, cool, yeah, what do you want to do with them?" And so basically the FBI guy's feeding him all of the plans and all of the weapons and everything, and even the idea, and then they go and arrest the poor hapless dupe who's just been talking with this informant online this whole time, didn't come up with any of this alone, but now is going to go down for 20 years for plotting terrorism when he had no idea what he was being set up for. And it's entrapment, and it's the same thing.
And they get paid sometimes.
Yeah.
Did you see the documentary Unfair Dealing?
No.
From Canada. Oh my God, you have to watch that. I actually did a film festival and featured that. I'll have to get him back on. You got to watch this. It picked apart a case in Canada where their FBI set up these poor Islamic young Canadians, some of whom were half-wits, okay?
Oh, no.
And the Canadian FBI rented the hideout for them. The Canadian FBI bought the fertilizer, okay? The Canadian FBI rented the hideout right across the street right across the parking lot for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Canada's a big place. You could hide out in the woods. Okay, then get this. Then they're informant. They're a coke-sniffing, radicalized, reformed Islamic Canadian guy who ran the show for the FBI, their FBI. He takes these kids and he says, okay, kids, we're going to go play paintball up in the woods this weekend. All right? Wear your camo. All right? All right, I got a place in the woods. Okay. So he's driving the kids up to the woods, and they got beards and they got camo on, and he stops on the way to the woods. He says, I'm thirsty. Will you go knock on that door over there at that farmhouse? It's Canada. They're polite. Get me a glass of water. Okay. Knock on the door. Canadians, okay, here's a glass of water. They go to their camp. They play paintball. The paintball camp is transmogrified into a terrorist training camp.
Oh, no.
And they've got witnesses. Yes, sir. They knocked on our door. They was wearing camo.
God.
It's all in this film. You can't believe it. And people went to jail for a long, long time. It was a great film, unfair dealing. And you're right. It's the same thing. And they tried this stuff with Papadopoulos, okay? And it's not just to find out what's going on. They know it's not going on. They're trying to trip them up. They're trying to, get them to entrap themselves. Yeah. And it's not just Papadopoulos saying it. Now they got the tweets of the FBI saying that's what they're doing. Anyway, we're out of time. Helen Beniski, Helen of desTroy.com. Helen, we'll have you back on in 5-6 weeks?
Sounds good.
Very good. Thank you, friends. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Have a good night.